I think that the way they're using that specific, the 7 effective elements of a request is just, there's a lot more intentionality. There's a lot more focus on perspective. And so they're really, especially when they're dealing with other early in career, maybe this is someone on their team's first job out of college. And so they don't have all this industry knowledge, these years of industry knowledge. I'm making sure that these leaders are saying, hey, here's what you need to know. Here's maybe what you don't know, and really being able to fill in those gaps. The more that you do that up front, as frustrating as it may be, the easier it becomes eventually for that new employee to move up quickly, to develop those skills quickly.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
How to develop your leaders. You may be thinking to yourself, we're focused on so many other things. We don't need to develop the leaders around us. And I get it. We've got a small business as well. We have 8 employees, and it just is not necessarily the top thing that we're focused with right now. But as your company grows to 40 or 50 employees, it begins to be a much more important conversation inside your executive leadership teams is, how do we develop our leaders? How do we develop our emerging leaders? How do we give them the skills that they need to be successful? Well, we're going to unpack that in this episode. Now, this is a very special episode to me, hopefully to you as well, but 900 episodes so far. We've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews with founders and CEOs of fast growth companies, best-selling authors, famous people, not famous people, and some solo episodes mixed in there where I brought you some special content. But today we have a very special episode with Amanda Hammett. Yes, that is my wife. She is an absolute dynamo. Just listen to some of the insights she has and shares with you about how to develop your leaders. We're going to give away some free content inside here. Specifically some frameworks that we use inside of our leadership development program, Leadership On-Ramp. And if you have any level of curiosity about what we're doing, write down those URLs and go check out the content. I know a lot of people don't take the time. Maybe they're listening in the car or listening in a place where they're not able to write these things down, but make sure that you continue this conversation because this is serious. Now, here's the interview with Amanda. Hey, Amanda.
Hi, Gene.
If you guys wondering why she said it like that, this is Amanda, my amazing better half, beautiful wife, but also lead coach for our Leadership On-Ramp program. Yes,
I am. Thanks for having me on the show. I guess I'm a little different than most of your guests.
You're definitely different. You light up my life in many ways, but I'm sure people don't want to see me gush over how amazing you are and how beautiful and smart. But I am really excited to bring this content to you. This is kind of a big celebration. We've done 900 episodes. When I told you that we've done 900 episodes, what was your first thought?
I honestly, I couldn't believe it because I remember when this was just an idea, the seed of an idea years and years ago. I don't even know how many years you've been doing this. It seems like forever, like 7?
8 plus.
8.
Do you remember you saying that you didn't know what a podcast was, or you thought they were stupid or something? You didn't listen to them? And
I didn't 8 years ago think that people actually listen to podcasts who would listen to that. Yes, I was wrong. I admit I was wrong.
And now you have multiple podcasts and you're still doing one today. What's the one you're on now? I forget.
The one that I'm co-hosting right now is called Wind Down Wednesday. We talk about all kinds of D&I issues in the workplace. So
you also started Millennial Rockstars? Or did you rebrand that?
I rebranded it to Next Gen Rockstars. So talking to those early in career talent that are really rock stars, what do companies need to know in order to get them, to recruit and retain them?
Well, I've already introduced you to the audience, but I'd love for you just to say a few sentences about kind of your connection to frontline leaders and emerging leaders. You can go back as far as you want, but how would you show and demonstrate a connection?
Yeah. So my name is Amanda Hammett. I am known in large part as the millennial translator, or actually as a generational translator, because I help companies, senior leaders that tend to be a little bit older, Gen X, baby boomers, really relate to those Gen Z millennial employees that they are just wanting to pull their hair out over. And so what I'm doing is actually helping companies develop those early in career leaders, maybe that are taking on their very first leadership role, people management role, all the way up to director levels who have been leading for a while, but maybe not as successfully as they could have been all this time.
Well, that's a pretty quick summary. We're going to dive into the details here. Here's how this fits in together, because, I just want to make sure that we're explicit with this. I am an executive coach here on staff. I've been working with founders and CEOs for over a decade. It really is my life's work. I love being able to be a part of their growth and their insights. And it just really is a different world from 10 years ago. And I know Amanda knows what I'm talking about, but I really am excited about what I do. Now, to better support founders, CEOs, and their teams, we saw that there was a gap. There was a need for leadership development. Developing your leaders was something that wasn't happening. It wasn't done well if it was happening. And we saw this gap and we said, look, how could we solve that? So I'm not going to go back through the details of this, but you've been working frontline conversations, lead coach for Leadership On-Ramp. We're going to go through 3 big things that you need to be aware of to develop your leaders. And before we jump into it, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I do want to point out that our paths started, completely parallel to each other. There was no initial 10 years ago plan that there would be a crossover. But as we started seeing this need and researching this need and just really hearing how it was, really hindering these fast growth companies, it was okay, we can take what I do, mix it with what you do, and have this really phenomenal, massive impact on these companies at all levels. So
that's a pretty good way to put it. So again, we started Leadership On-Ramp to help companies continue to grow, to really help frontline middle managers. We call them emerging leaders. And this is what we're going to give you, some insights that we're discovering from the data that we collect on the front end. So we do a pre-assessment. We also assess the managers that are leading those emerging leaders, those directors, if you will. And then we are talking directly with them. Amanda does a lot of these conversations. I do some of them, but we're going to go through a little bit of the data, but really, what do you need to know from the data? And we're going to start on, I think it's one of the most powerful pieces inside Leadership On-Ramp, but it's how to deliver or how to handle yourself inside of a difficult conversation. Go ahead and frame that in for us.
So yeah, the difficult conversations, we actually created internally a framework that we walk everyone through, and actually how to prepare, how to deliver, and then the after effects of having these difficult conversations. And the thing is every time I ask every class that I'm teaching, think really quickly about one conversation you've been avoiding. Not a single person to date has ever said, no, I'm not avoiding any conversation. Not a single person. So that to me tells me that we are all avoiding these conversations, hoping it gets better. And this is really a framework to help them address it head on and be able to move past it.
I want to add something to this. They get this naturally. I've talked about this for the cascading effect of leadership. Yeah. They will learn the good traits of good leadership, but not quite as much as we want that connection to be, but they will truly watch your actions on the bad traits of your own leadership. And I've talked to a lot of founder CEOs with 10, 20, 30 years experience that are avoiding difficult conversations, hoping it would get better, maybe because it's just uncomfortable. They don't want that other person to feel bad. They want to be liked, whatever it is getting in the way. In my opinion, you've really got to address it, and you've got to learn to navigate through this, because leadership does not happen without difficult conversations. It's just part of the job.
Well, one of the It's like we have to think about is the cost of not having these conversations, because a lot of times other team members will see, oh, Jean is not addressing this issue with this difficult employee or whatever the situation is. And then that has negative effects on the team. So the team might start, slacking off. The team could actually say, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And I'm going to, resign and go elsewhere. It could be issues with a vendor, or any number of things. And it's because you're so caught in your uncomfort, you're not addressing it and you're not seeing the actual real cost of this difficult conversation.
Well said. I want to put some data in this because, that's just kind of the way I see the world, but I want you to just have context, and then we want to dive deeper into it. But when we take on people into the Leadership On-Ramp program, we do them in groups of like 8 to 10, so smaller groups, all within one company is what we've been doing. And we have the pre-assessment. One of the questions inside there is, how prepared are you to have a difficult conversation? And really the answer comes back a little bit less than 7, about 6.7 the last time I found the exact number. And this is a self-assessed number. When you hear that, Amanda, what are your first thoughts?
That self-awareness is a skill that maybe we need to work on.
For sure. Specifically, here's what I think about. I think that them being prepared for a difficult conversation, this is probably where they aspire to be sometimes, because what we're noticing, this is not the real truth. There's a mismatch in how they self-assess themselves and literally what their directors, their direct managers are seeing. You're having these conversations
all the time.
Give us a peek into those conversations.
So I'm having conversations with the leaders who come through with their direct leader. What do I need to know as I bring this person through? What are some blind spots, things of that nature, things that you guys are working on developmentally. And not only that, but conversations that I'm having with HR is just difficult conversations is the number one thing that they come and say, we're struggling with this. When I ask the leaders of these early in career leaders, tell me about their skills in having a difficult conversation, a lot of them can't even give me an actual number. It's more of a oof, or oh God, I just don't think that we're doing this at all. So if that gives you any indication that this 6.7, the 6-7 range is not registering, it's closer to 3-4 is what the senior leader is saying. When I get them in, when I'm talking to them, I don't even think it's a 3 or 4. I think it's potentially below that.
What are the things that you hear most about the reasons why they're not having it? They're avoiding these conversations.
Honestly, they just want to put their heads in the sand. They just want to put their head down, do the work, and hope that it goes away. Hope that it gets better. And we all know that hope is not a strategy.
When I'm talking to founders about this, part of it, they said, well, we want to empower them. We don't want to micromanage. And so they're not having these kind of conversations because they've got made up in their head that this isn't good leadership, giving someone feedback and telling them that they need to improve, which is really kind of crazy because I think this is the heart of leadership, is actually having conversations about, behavior changes and what are you afraid of, or why wouldn't you be as confident as you are in some areas here. And these difficult conversations span everything from, I remember the most difficult one I had. Have I ever told you the story, Amanda, about my first job? I had to be the one in the office that said someone's breath smelled.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And even the mints didn't work and the gum that we offered, and we're all talking behind their back. They wanted to know that. They didn't want us talking behind their back. That's fair to say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody wants that.
So difficult conversations, we got to get to 2 more. And I know we've kind of got bogged down here a little bit here. Here's what I want you to take away from this, is that your frontline leaders, your middle managers are not prepared to do this, partly because there's a mindset shift that's necessary. The other thing is they just don't have the skills. And so one of the things that we could do is we could teach the class on this, because we do teach a class, but we could give you the framework that we include in the class absolutely free. So just go to jeanhammett.com/difficult. Again, if you want to get a quick download, you can share this with your team. Just go to jeanhammett.com/difficult. We are going to ask you for email address so that we can send it to you. And there's some follow-up behind that to support you. Did you want to add anything else to that, Amanda?
No, I mean, honestly, I think that if we just used a framework and started having difficult conversations, it will get easier. But I think that we just go into it and we build it up so much in our heads and we make it far worse than it actually has to be. And so all the anxiety around it actually could be cut off at the knees.
I want to leave you with this, and I'm not trying to pitch the Leadership on Ramp program, but with attention and with that framework, people are moving from the 3 that really is kind of where they are closer to about an 8 because they have skills, they've done it before, and there's no longer resistance to doing it. So make sure you go to genehammett.com/difficult and get that free framework. Now let's move into the second piece of this, because we're going to go through 3 different ones. We're going to go a little bit quicker on this one, but the thing that we're seeing is people just don't really know how to delegate powerfully. How would you frame this in, Amanda?
Yeah, delegation is obviously another major issue that we see. Typically early in career leaders or even leaders we see at the CEO level of these high growth, fast growth companies, they are strong, high performing individual performers that were promoted into a people management role, but they don't know how to make the transition from doer to delegator, doer to leader. And so they're still wanting to do as much as they were doing, if not more, now because they feel this stronger responsibility, this stronger, sense of ownership. And it leaves their team in peril. It leaves their mental health teetering because they just can't get it all done. And then it becomes a massive problem because the team below them is not developing. They're not learning new skills. They're not, refining other skills because everything is going through this one leader who's used to being a doer.
When I think about this, when I'm working with different emerging leaders, I think it really is just a communication gap. They don't know how to communicate effectively. And so what we end up doing is really backing up, and we don't talk about delegation as much as we just had a class today that I was running through the 7 elements of an effective request. I know you're coaching people through this. You're also leading the facilitated workshops. What are some of the ways that they are using these requests that really is different from the way they are doing it today?
I think that the way they're using the 7 effective elements of a request is just, there's a lot more intentionality. There's a lot more focus on perspective. And so they're really, especially when they're dealing with other early in career, maybe this is someone on their team's first job out of college. And so they don't have all this industry knowledge, these years of industry knowledge. I'm making sure that these leaders are saying, hey, here's what you need to know. Here's maybe what you don't know, and really being able to fill in those gaps. The more that you do that up front, as frustrating as it may be, the easier it becomes eventually for that new employee to move up quickly, to develop those skills quickly.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm going to give a little bit of a tease of inside that program. One of the elements I like the most. I think they're all very important. So it's not like you can only just do one, because that's the problem. Most people aren't doing all 7. They're leaving some things out. Usually they're leaving 3 or 4 things out. And that is the problem. It's not just one. But I want to give one, and then Amanda's going to give her favorite. I think the conditions of satisfaction for me is one of the most important pieces of it. They're all equally important, but I just want to kind of frame this in for you. I think we need to do a better job of what does success look like in this project. I know I do this with my own team. If I'm typing an email out, I'm trying to create a vision for what it will look like at the end. And I'm not giving them the step-by-step as much, but I'm giving them what I see as the finished product. The conditions of satisfaction really are a very clear way for you to describe when this is done. It will look like this, I will be able to do this, and it will work this way when we do these different use cases and whatever it may be. And so some projects are going to be very simple, but for more complex projects, obviously it's going to be a little bit different. So what's your favorite?
Mine's a little more basic than that, because I think that sometimes it's the basics that people kind of get tripped up on. And it's really having a present listener and a present talker. So the person making the request and the person who's actually receiving the request, making sure that we're both here, that this is a good time to discuss this. There's nothing worse than if you're, back in the office in person, for somebody running by your desk saying, hey, I need you to do X, Y, Z. And then they take off and you're like, I wasn't ready for this. I'm not a short order cook. I was not ready for this, command basically. And I have 10,000 other things on my desk. Like I'm not in a mental space for this. So I think that that's something that we see a lot, even, virtually. It's just people are, clocking away on their computers and, oh yeah, I need this and I need that. And they're not even seeing the other person. Yeah, I can't do that. Or their body language. How are they responding to your request?
Very well said. We could go into this for a full day, but we're going to move on to the next one. Before we leave in this whole concept of delegating powerfully, we truly believe that it's okay for an employee to come back and say, you know what, based on where I am right now, I can't get to that by the end of today. Do you want to talk with me about my priorities? And so maybe I can push some things, because if we just keep piling things on and we're not really taking time for them to accept this new request, then has it really happened? Just because we want it doesn't mean that it we're all in the same place. And so you want to make sure that you're slowing things down a little bit, being much more intentional, which we said, and that will give you a little bit better chance to delegate powerfully. Well, we're going to go into the third area behind this. This is the one I love to talk about most. And I think this is the place where most people are really lacking, especially if you're going to go from being a doer to being a leader. And this is coaching skills. You're talking to a lot of people. What do they think coaching is that they feel like maybe they've got it wrong? Because everyone thinks it's something different.
What I see most is that they confuse coaching with telling, or coaching with teaching, but they're different things. Telling is obviously a more directive, you do this, you do X, you do Y. Teaching is, maybe when you have a new employee on your team, teaching them how the systems work, the process works, whatever. But then coaching is really different. It's taking somebody with that base knowledge and helping them to refine their skills, to develop their skills even further. And sometimes that involves really shining a light on some of their blind spots that they may have. So they may think that they have this really, I'm doing this particular skill really well. Okay, yeah, you are doing that well, but we can add to it. Or maybe you're forgetting this one piece along the way. And here's why this is important. So that coaching bit is something that we're not seeing. A lot of people say that they're coaching, but they're really telling. And that's problematic.
When you're talking about this way, I bet they picked this up from the early childhood. You were in sports in high school. I was in sports in high school. Our coach did not coach us. They told us what to do. You'll play this spot. This is the way you play it. And they tell us the things to do. And so that's where they're picking up on it. Maybe we even learn it from the sidelines when we watch professional or college sports. But in a professional setting, when we're talking about business coaching and leadership coaching, the best thing that you can do is not to tell someone what to do next, but it's to ask a series of questions that gets them to maybe shift their perspective, shift their level of thinking, and for them to make the next decision. There's lots of frameworks that we provide in there, and different skills and different ways to empower people. What would you, when you're having these one-on-one conversations with people, what unlocks this power of coaching for you?
Well, one is definitely encouraging them to ask questions, especially if they're a parent. I relate it like this, if you have a very small toddler, you tell them. But as they get older, as a teenager, you might not tell them directly, don't do this, but you might say, is this the best use of your time? Is this helping you get this next school project done? And so when they're parents, that they seem to relate to that. On the other hand, it's always really helpful when you share a little story, because it's always very obvious when you are telling a story from a third person perspective. Everybody can see the major issue, but if you're in the story, it's hard to see it. And so usually if we just point it out in that way, that makes sense.
I want to add to this from a whole coaching perspective. The biggest challenge we have is doers moving to leaders. Doers are very versed in how to get the result, right? Whether it be in sales or project management or marketing or customer service or operations, logistics, whatever it may be. if they've a high performer, they get rewarded and they have their own team. Now, their own team may not have the same level of skills. And so the easiest thing and the quickest thing is for that performer is to tell them what to do. Yeah. And they'll do this over and over and over. And they'll think that they're coaching them. They'll think that they're doing a really good job. And to a level they are. But here's where the mismatch happens. You realize that those people are not thinking for themselves. They're not feeling empowered. They don't really feel valued. They feel like a cog in the wheel. Whereas if with the coaching skills, that person takes their knowledge of the work and starts asking questions to get that person engaged and say, what options do we have in front of us? What do you see as the options? What choice would you make if you were making this decision? Those are just two basic questions, really basic, but those will start to unlock how someone is seeing what's in front of them. But telling them what to do is easy, fast, asking questions, slower, but it provides a deeper level of understanding and buy-in. Because a lot of people talk about, we want more buy-in around here. We want people that are really engaged and really make decisions. They're decisive, they're empowered. But yet if we always tell them what to do, we'll be surrounded by people that are waiting to be told what to do.
100%. And the thing is when that leader is out, I had a situation recently where a leader was out with COVID for over a week. Her team basically ground to a halt while she was out sick, and they could do nothing. And so when she came back, she was even more stressed than really she should have been. And so that was actually something we had been working on for a couple of months, but she was like, I see now how important this is.
This is the reason why I've had Amanda on here, because she's on the front lines working with these emerging leaders through Leadership on Ramp. We've been doing this for years and years now, and now we have a chance to add more people to the program. We've been scaling up our team and preparing for this. If you're curious about what Leadership on Ramp is and closing that leadership gap with your emerging leaders, my next request for you is to invite you to go check out a short video on how we do what we do and why it works so well. Just go to genehammett.com/emerging leaders. It's about a 4-minute video. Hopefully you've got enough to do that. And we will give you the entire keys to what we do inside that 4 minutes. And if you're curious about what's next, we'll offer you a next chance to connect with me or someone else on the team. But all of this being said, Amanda, what are the parting words around, developing your leaders, really these emerging leaders?
Well, we did go through 3 major things: difficult conversations, delegation, coaching. Those are 3 major sticking points. But there's one more, actually, that I see over and over and over again. And it's confidence. These emerging leaders have been strong in, individual contributors for a long time. So they have built up their confidence there. But when they moved into this leadership role, they don't have that same level of confidence. But we live in a world of fake it until you make it, like, oh, of course, I've got this. And companies aren't providing the kind of resources and assistance that these new leaders need. And so what we're doing, giving them these skills, giving them these frameworks, working with them on these tools, coaching them along the way is helping to build their confidence. That confidence goes a long way in them, being able to develop their own teams, being able to create, teams that are self-sufficient, that can run if you're out for a week sick, without you. Those are the things that we're doing. And it takes these small micro steps to do it.
Well said. I want to add to this because I really believe in the power of coaching. Inside Leadership on Ramp, we've included some coaching time for each of these people, private conversations. And what I've noticed in the private conversations I've had, I'm sure you can kind of relate to this, Amanda, is there are people out there that are struggling. They don't want to tell you that they're afraid. They don't want to tell you that they have self-doubt. Maybe they've been really good in some areas, but now they're expected to perform within teams or in other areas at which they're not experts in. And they don't want to go to their direct leaders and say, you know what, I'm not sure here, because that's a sign of weakness. It really is a place where they're not having that conversation. And this is really dangerous because it is so easy to unlock someone who has self-doubt if you're willing to coach them through that process. And that's what we do inside of our programs. And if you're not working with us, you should be working with someone to develop those emerging leaders, developing the leaders that are really good A players, talented people I won't go too far into this, but this will help you retain people, help you attract the right talent, and help you continue growing through the challenges that you face in front of you. We're all of our businesses have certain challenges. But Amanda, I want to really thank you for being here, spending some time with us to look at these 3 core areas, plus the bonus of confidence. Any parting words?
No, I guess that's it. Thank you so much for having me on. What we do is important, and these CEOs, these CEOs that are looking to continue this, astronomical growth that their companies have seen, this is the way you do it. It's not a new sales strategy. It's not a new product line. It's really taking your people and taking them to the next level so that they can support that growth.
Well, she said it well. I'll leave you there. Thank you, Amanda, for being here, sharing your wisdom. And hopefully you guys have gotten something out of this, and some of the things that are missing and how to move forward in developing your leaders. Wow, really love being able to talk about this. We went over, but it really was such good content that I wanted to just keep it going. I wanted to have her insights, and as well as me share what I'm seeing is how to develop your leaders. And inside this, there's so many more places we could go, and there's so many more things we could talk about. My hope is that you will take this very seriously. Go check out the free resource about difficult conversations. Just go to genehammett.com/difficult. And then if you want to get more information about emerging leaders and really about our program Leadership on Ramp, how it works, why it works so well, just go to genehammett.com/emerging leaders. Short video there that will give you about 4 minutes worth of content that will give you some insight. Are you ready to move forward in developing your leaders, really taking care of the emerging leaders inside your company? I give you everything absolutely free. So all you have to do is take action. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, with courage. We'll see you next time.